asset management really starts from the due diligence phase, because you come up with a business plan, you do the due diligence, then you go over that plan to make sure, hey, everything we see is the same as we envisioned it. And you put it into your investment summary, and you're seeing that execution all the way through. So it's so critical, all the different facets, starting with your budget. Because if you're not on top of your budget, you can quickly blow through and run out of CapEx money. Then you're really in a tough spot. You need to have excess capital. You don't want to be having to have a capital call or use your cash flow to pay for CapEx. You need to have that buffer. And if it means lowering your IRR on your proposal to your investors, do it every day. You've got to maintain that flexibility and constantly evaluate where you stand with your property.
You're listening to the Guerrilla State Investing Podcast. We're not here to bruise your bananas with guru sales pitches, overrated fluff, or any other kind of monkey business. We simply provide the ground-pounding truth about what it takes to be successful in real estate.
All right, and welcome back to another episode of Guerrilla State Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Magierowski, and we are here to give you the ground pounding truth about what it takes to be successful in real estate. And my guest today has gone down that path. He is a successful investor, podcaster, asset manager, hosts his own asset management summit, co-author of a book called Best in Class. The list goes on. He actually produced 3 independent films as well. So I'm interested in hearing about those, Gary. My guest today is Gary Lipsky. Gary, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Brandon.
Awesome. So you've been investing since 2002. You have over 1,900 units, 65 million assets under management. You're the co-founder of Asset Management Summit. You also host your own podcast. Talk to me about that podcast. Is it specifically asset management related, or is it just any investor, dealer, syndicator, anyone on the podcast?
Yeah, we specifically pick one topic on asset management. And it's, 15 minutes long. We don't spend a lot of time getting to know someone. We just talk about, one facet, and it's an opportunity for someone to, for our listeners to learn about, one specific subject versus us being all over the place. So it's really good. It's short. You get, a lot of good content and, not a lot of fluff.
I like it. No fluff. That's what we're about. A lot of guru fluff out there, Gary, to say the least. Yeah. But so your expertise, you would say, is asset management, large multifamily asset management.
Yeah, because I have that. I've been an entrepreneur pretty much my whole life. Never really worked for anyone else, so I'm used to running businesses, and that's what asset management is about. It's coming up with a business plan, executing it, measuring it, having accountability, and seeing it all the way through to disposition. And that's my area of expertise that I bring. And I'm also got a thirst for knowledge, because you never know where you're going to learn, a new tidbit from someone else. So, that's another reason why we do the podcast too, to get, so we can improve, as an organization as well.
So dialing it back to one of your first properties, were you forced into the position of asset manager? Because I know a lot of young investors, when they get their first property, and I think we talked about this before we started recording, like the 2 most important positions after a property is closed is property management and asset management. So were you forced into that, or was that something you always said, man, I'd love to have my thumb on that property until disposition?
Yeah, my business partner and I, we both wanted to be hands-on, and not raise, for other people. We wanted to be in control of our property. And so we knew we were going to be asset managers, from the first property we bought. And, this way we can ensure safety for our investors and really get to know every little piece of it. And there are so many little pieces of it, that you have to dive into, from, the monthly financials to the leasing activity. There's so much involved. And I think, a lot of new syndicators don't realize how much time it takes to be a good asset manager.
All right, well, let's dig into the weeds on that, because you're right. You can sit here and say, I'm going to go buy a large multifamily property, 15, 20, 100 units, 200 units. And there's a lot of work to get that to the finish line, but that's only the beginning. And let's just talk to experienced investors and young investors about what is the role of the asset manager? When does it start? And what are the, maybe the top three things that you're responsible for and some big red flags to look out for?
Yeah. So, asset management really starts from the due diligence phase, because you've come up with a business plan. You review it with your property management company because you want to make sure that you can execute on this plan. You do the due diligence, then you go over that plan to make sure, hey, is everything we see is the same as we envisioned it? Any numbers change? And if so, that's fine. And you put it into your investment summary, when you go out to your investors and you make any changes you need to make, and you're seeing that execution all the way through. So it's so critical, all the different facets, starting with your budget, because if you're not on top of your budget, you can quickly blow through and run out of CapEx money, and then you're really in a tough spot. You need to have excess capital. You don't want to be having to have a capital call or use your cash flow to pay for CapEx. You need to have that buffer, and if it means lowering your IRR on your proposal to your investors, do it every day. If I'd gladly send out a deal that has a 16% IRR versus a 17% IRR, knowing that I've got buffers. I'd rather under promise and overperform, and have that safety measure, because we've pivoted on our business plans on a number of our properties that we thought the painting was pretty good on the property when we took over, but then after we fixed everything up, we're like, that's the one missing piece. And painting isn't cheap, but we had extra money, and we were able to reallocate our CapEx and move forward with that. So you've got to maintain that flexibility and constantly evaluate where you stand with your property, every 3 months, basically.
How often are you hosting asset management meetings with property managers on, let's just use an example, like let's say it was a 100-unit apartment complex and you're playing the asset management role. What's your week look like as asset manager of that property?
Every single week we have our call, even if we get to stabilize, whether our first property was a 42 unit or 176 unit, every single week we're having a Zoom call so we can see each other, and they have to report out. We have a very specific weekly report that they fill out with all the different leasing activity, occupancy, work orders, everything we need to know so that we can save a lot of time when we have our weekly calls. We're not asking a million questions of things we need to find out. We get that report ahead of time so we can go and see it, and then we can delve into the issues that we have, or everything is humming along. Then let's push rents and let's do this and that. But there's ebbs and flows to a property. It's not always a moonshot to massive profitability. There's just curveballs thrown your way, and so you've got to work through that and be very proactive. We don't wait for things that happen. We want to tackle them before they happen. So like renewals, we're tackling them 3 months in advance. With renovating units, we don't wait till a unit is vacant to let our reno team know and to order materials. We want all that backdated so that we know, hey, we better have everything ready to go a few days before that unit's becoming vacant, and the team ready to go, and we're rocking and rolling. And if we can constantly shrink timelines, we're gonna save a lot of money because we've rented up the unit, and that means huge extra returns to our investors because we're proactive.
Sounds like a lot of work as an asset manager. I mean, you got to think you're in charge of that property. You're in charge of communicating with the property manager, with the investors, with the equity partners. And a lot of people might know the answer to this, but maybe just dive into how do you get paid as an asset manager? Is there different structures? Is it equity? Is it salary based? Is it performance based? I know there's 20 different ways to skin a cat, but inside of your group, how are you guys paying asset managers?
Yeah, we get a 2% asset management fee based on the income, which really doesn't amount to much, quite honestly. You mentioned performance-based. Yeah, it's performance-based. The better we do for our investors, the more money we're going to make as well. There's also part of our, we don't have a big amount of sponsors on a deal, so there's money allocated for asset management as well that is paid on at the end. So pretty much the money that we really make is based on performance, which is fine. We kick butt. We're gonna do really well, and thankfully that's been the case on all of our properties so far.
So you're carving out a little piece of that general partnership pie for asset management, which will be collected at the exit of the property. And then you said 2% asset management. Is that 2% of net income? Is it NOI? It's NOI for debt service? Is that right?
It's not NOI. It's 2% on the gross income.
2% on gross income. 2% of gross income you make. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's again. Yeah. You're basically doing a lot of work to get paid at the end as an asset manager.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
How many properties do you currently asset manage, or what's the most you've ever done?
So I January 1st, I actually hired an asset manager for our team because now we have 5 properties. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I think we have 5 properties now. We sold 2 last year, but as we continue to grow, I wanted to make sure we can handle it as we look for more properties. I don't want our current properties to not have the attention that they need. So I hired someone full-time to help on that part. So the more properties you have, the harder it gets because you're getting pulled in a lot of different areas. So yeah, I highly recommend it. If you have a number of properties, to bring on someone to help you, dot the I's and cross the T's, because there's a lot of detailed work that needs to be done. And, for one person, it's hard to do if you're not dedicated towards the asset management piece. It's hard to do everything well.
Yeah. And we see a lot of education out there on, how to syndicate apartments, how to buy multifamily, how to fix and flip, how to raise capital. Is there education material out there on how to asset manage?
Yeah, I actually wrote that book, Best in Class. It's an Amazon bestseller. I think it's like $15. It really goes through everything, and there's some links that you can go to get some of our resources that we use, and did a course on asset management. We have a summit that we've done in the past, and we'll do again maybe late spring, summer on asset management too. And we brought on 20 top operators to talk about all the different facets of asset management. So there is some education out there, not a lot, but we're the ones really pushing it because there is a lack, and certainly we want to continue to improve. And I know a lot of other people out there that want to get better at it.
What kind of personality do you need to be an asset manager? Because I think it's a misconception of how much work it actually is and how big of a responsibility it is. I mean, you've probably seen some good ones, some bad ones, some great ones. What separates a good asset manager from the great asset manager?
Yeah, I think that attention to detail is so critical. It's not brain surgery at all, but you've got to have that attention to detail. You've got to be able to measure everything, hold people accountable. You need to be proactive. And, so we use a lot of Google Sheets for our team, for everyone to see and be held accountable. It's free. So there's a lot of free resources out there to be a good asset manager. But you got to just stay on top of it every single week, every single property that you have. You can't fall asleep at the wheel, because these incremental jumps that you can make really, when you're talking about a 4% cap rate. So you take, if you could add $100,000 to your property and do, divide it by a 4 cap, that's like $4 million, 2.5 million dollars that you've added to your property. I mean, that's huge.
Hey, explain. Can you dive into that? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So, all the different mechanisms that I use. So I shrink timelines with the renewals for our property, for the renovations. Maybe I can generate an extra 25,000 off of that. If I'm constantly managing how the leads to leases along that whole conversion from to applications to showings, along the way, and I save money on my marketing. And again, I'm increasing my occupancy, and when I increase my occupancy, I could increase the rents. So if I generate an extra $100,000 and my cap rate is 4%, I've created $2.5 million in equity for that property when we go to sell it, and that's that's huge for our investors. So that's what we're constantly trying to do. How can we add income lines to our property? Are there any expenses that we can reduce?
That's a big one right there. Gary. Is everyone thinks about, how can I increase rents and increase revenue? Increase rents, increase revenue. The more money I make, the more the property's gonna be worth. But you got to look on the other side, is how can you reduce expenses and improve efficiencies? Because that's going to be the NOI, right? Is your income and your expenses. So how do you reduce the expense ratio? And like you talked about, if you can get your lead times, more efficient, you're going to save money on marketing dollars. Maybe you go do, what's the water thing they call on the property?
We do some water
conservation on the property to reduce expenses. And
that could be huge.
Yeah. There's little things you can do, especially the more door count and the larger the property, the more zeros there are. So you really gotta really cognitive of reducing those expenses and improving efficiencies. Okay, let's take a break from real estate, Gary. I want to hear about these films back in the 20s.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I worked on a couple films as a PA, and it was boring as heck, just standing around long days. And
you say as a PA, what's a PA?
So production assistant.
Okay. You got to use the big words here, because nobody knows anything about film industry. Maybe there's a few, but.
Yeah. So I'm basically a peon, basically. Okay. I hold traffic as far as people or whatever they need. That's what a PA does. And it was mind numbing. And I was doing some writing and whatnot. And I'm like, well, why don't I just, make a low budget film myself? A buddy of mine had something, and I was real low budget. I mean, we're talking, I don't know, $60,000. We shot in a few weeks in New Jersey, where I grew up. And it was a lot of fun doing, all the different pieces to that. And then I did another one where we sold some foreign rights. We did a short, we sold some foreign rights. And that was, we did that for $600,000. So real low budget. And then I was involved in another film that was, I think it was like a $2 million budget with like Joan Rivers and Robert Klein and Jennifer Tilly. So some names. Branford Marsalis did the music. But for the most part, these are, straight to video films, but it was a great learning experience, to deal with all the finances, all the different pieces, and every day there's just changes and issues that you've got to deal with on the fly. And there's no, we'll deal with it next week. You've got to deal with it now and come up with solutions. So it's just a great training ground for running any kind of business in the future.
And is this pre-real estate for you? This is before?
Yeah. Pre-real estate. It was, it was a lot of fun. It was, crazy hours. I felt like there was a lack of control on my future because you're relying on other, if people, a distributor didn't like the movie, it could get buried. There's just a lot of pieces, and when you're writing a script, you can rewrite it like 50 times for someone. Like I had something in development with MTV at the time, and Michael Keaton, and you just never know. And so you've got to have faith and stay in it. And I was having a kid at the time, and so I kind of transitioned out because I didn't want to be constantly traveling and crazy hours, and while I was about to have a kid, and it was time to kind of move on from that. So I started a different business, but I had been doing a little bit of real estate investing at that time. But
what were you investing in that time? Because it's kind of leading into like, how did you, what was the staircase you took step by step to get into what you're doing now in real estate? So where'd you start?
Yeah. So it was really my family house, a single family, that I didn't look at it as my forever house that I'm going to live in it for 30 years. I looked at it as an investment. And we converted the garage to an office for my business and helped build it with a contractor. We opened up the kitchen and did some things at the house. So little did I know at the time that I was learning how to value add, and eventually we sold that, moved to a different community, and then upgraded that house, and then you turn that into a rental, and then moved to another house. So that was like my foray, kind of a long gestating period of investing in real estate. And then I started looking at fourplexes and eightplexes in some rough neighborhoods around LA, and just never pulled the trigger, and found out about real estate syndication. I started investing in other people's deals and learning along the way, and then started doing my own deals eventually as well.
So that's a good progression. Actually, I kind of follow the same path. It was kind of like an accident that I got into real estate when I made money on my own residence. Like we bought a foreclosed home. I went in and I painted the whole thing. Just all I wanted to do was get in at a really good price and a bigger home, and I'll do all the renovations. I don't care. I just want to live here. And then 2 years later, we look at it, we go, holy cow, we got $50,000 in equity in this thing. Let's sell it and upgrade. And we did it again. We bought another foreclosure. And then I'm sitting there going, this thing, like, this is value add. I didn't know that at the time. And I met a guy who was buying some smaller stuff. We bought a 3-unit, a 6-unit. So it's a slow progression. It doesn't have to be 2 feet into a syndication, 100 units. There's a lot of money to be made on smaller deals. So do you still do any smaller deals on your own outside of the syndications?
So I do some spec home building in my town. So it's within, let's say, a mile and a half from where I live. It's high end, but now agents feed me deals all the time, and so we started doing some flips, but the market kind of changed, and there just wasn't enough money in that. So we do some really nice houses that we built. We buy a tear down, go through the process of getting the permits, and then we build really, really nice houses. So, I just do, a few at a time, not too many, because.
Are you contracting them yourself?
No, I don't know.
You have a builder?
I have a contractor. Yeah.
And so you said you buy existing homes, tear them down. What do they call those? What's the word for it? Isn't there a word for that?
Tear downs.
You call them tear downs? Okay.
Yeah.
Do you buy any just vacant lots and build on those for spec homes?
I haven't. It's just I just haven't seen a price or a location that I really like.
Yeah.
So, but I would certainly. And I've gone, some deals that were just vacant land, but I just and then never ended up purchasing them.
So with the spec homes, let's say you build it, just use for a number, you build it for $200,000 and you sell it for $300,000. What are the tax implications on that? Since you didn't live in it for 2 years, there's got to be some capital gain stuff. Is it just straight up capital gains?
So let's 10x it because I'm in Manhattan Beach. So I'm buying teardowns at like 1.5, 1.8.
I was trying to use easy numbers. 1.5 for a tear. 1.5. Okay, you're using bigger numbers.
Right. Yeah, but
all right.
Yes, there's it's more than a year, so it's long-term capital gains. But because I'm a real estate professional and syndicator, I could put it into those deals, wipe out my tax gains. I'm just following the law, and so it's great. I can wipe out all those gains, or take some of that money and reinvest it into another property. But so, yeah, I can. That's the beauty of real estate, the tax benefits.
Let's talk about that real estate professional status. I think that's something maybe a lot of people don't know about. Maybe they do, but I'm just curious on how you qualify for it. Because from my understanding, if you're a real estate professional, you can take the losses from all your real estate ventures and put them towards all of your income, not just income coming from real estate. So your W-2, your 1099s, is that correct? When I say that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And how do you qualify?
Well, because I do real estate, 24/7, 365. So it's easy.
Yeah. But what are the qualifications? 750 hours a year? Does that sound right?
Yeah, I believe so. You can't, you've got to be careful. If you have another job, it's really hard to prove. But this is what I do full time. I definitely recommend it for other people that maybe have a kind of a spouse that stays home and helps with the kids, and maybe they can get more involved on the real estate investment side. Definitely great for investors to take advantage of it, because you can use those losses against W-2 income on your significant other. Because what we do and most syndicators do is when they buy a property, they do a cost segregation study on that property. So if someone invests $100,000, you might have $70,000 K1 loss the first year, up to $100,000 loss, and that's huge. And I certainly take advantage of that, and all my investors do.
Yeah. I'm actually going to for this 2022. I'm going to attempt to qualify as a real estate professional. I, like you, I put in far more than 750 hours a year on it. I mean, it's becoming busier and busier and busier. I use my Google Calendar to track everything. Everything's tracked. The issue I'm going to have is that I own a couple other businesses, and I'm a W-2 employee on one of those businesses. So even though the hours might add up, I may not qualify because of that W-2, but that's for your CPA to provide guidance on you. Let me just put a disclaimer out there that Gary and I are not CPA professionals. Please consult your CPA for anything to do with real estate professional status. I don't want to get in trouble there. All right. So on the segment on the show, we do a segment called what bruises your bananas inside of real estate. You said at the beginning, Gary, you don't like the fluff either, all the BS. So from your experience these past few years, what really bruises your bananas out there in the real estate world?
I guess there's a lot of gurus out there, like you said, that talk about how to get the deal, but don't talk about how what to do after you get the deal, and just people chasing deals nonstop, and their properties aren't performing well, and they're not doing the asset management. So before you get a next deal, make sure that your property is performing well, and you have people allocated to help manage the deal. And so, especially when you're using other people's money to buy the property, you have an innate responsibility for those people money to make sure you say what you said you're going to do on that property and make it perform. Yeah.
It's a good point. I do see a lot of gurus out there. I'm not going to name names, but they seem to talk about how to go get the deal, how to syndicate, how to do this, but they don't talk about how to actually manage the asset. And the reason they probably don't talk about it is they've never done it. That's my thoughts. It might rub people the wrong way, but I don't care. It's probably the truth. So, I mean, I think you would be considered a good guru inside of asset management with the summit, with the book, with the podcast. So kind of leading into that, what advice would you have to young investors that are maybe just getting into the game or looking to syndicate their first large deal?
Yeah, I would recommend partnering up with someone that has more experience than you. But you obviously, for them to work with you, you've got to bring something to the table, and maybe it's you're working for free your first deal, and I would recommend doing that. Gain the experience, because it will pay huge dividends down the road. This is, a lot of people think it's a get rich quick. It's, you will get rich in real estate, but over time, do your work and you will do very, very well. And don't worry so much about getting paid your first deal, second deal, third deal, whatever it is. Gain that experience, gain that knowledge, because it will more than pay itself back.
Great advice. Are there other asset classes that you guys are looking into outside of large multifamily?
I don't, I know successful people in storage and Airbnbs and all these other things, but it diverts my time and my expertise by looking at these other things. So if I was to do a deal, I would partner with an expert in that area, because I want to be able to be laser focused and perform really well for my investors. And I can't be looking at all these different asset classes. And that's, when I first got into real estate and before I found multifamily, I was looking at all these different things, and it can be overwhelming. So that's why I want to stay focused. And to me, it's a great asset class to invest in. There's certainly plenty of other good asset classes, but that's, other people are going to be experts in those.
Yeah, no, it's a really good point. It's to take down large apartments is a lot of time. You underwrite 150 to get one, or whatever the case may be. You've got to be laser focused. And you make a really good point that if you're going to go outside and go partner with self-storage or Airbnbs or triple net leases, is develop that relationship with a team that is doing that and say, hey, I'm interested in that asset class too, and here's how I can provide value to you if you have a deal, whether that's raising capital or on the asset management side, whatever it may be. All right. Where can people find you, Gary, if they want to get in touch, or, when's the next summit? Give us some information.
Yeah. Well, we're going to do a summit probably late spring or early summer. Check out our website, breakofdaycapital.com, to get more information on that. My email is gary@breakofdaycapital.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram. We have a YouTube page, so definitely reach out and connect.
Awesome, Gary. And all those links and everything will be in the show notes for everybody. So, man, we really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciated it.
Thanks for listening to the Gorilla State Investing Podcast, where we give you the ground-pounding truth about what it takes to be successful in real estate. Learn more at realfocus.org/Gorilla State Pod.